What is going on, everyone? This is your boy Nathan Crankfield. We got a little surprise episode today to talk about the situation with Tyreek Hill, because I knew that this was going to be something that I was going to want to talk about as soon as I saw it, as soon as I saw the stuff that was happening. And then it was the Twitter reactions and stuff is where you really start to get me, right? So you start to see all these Twitter reactions and people start to respond and react. So for those who don't know, Tyreek Hill was, I don't even think you could accurately say he was arrested. Maybe he was officially arrested, but I haven't seen like a mugshot come out. It was my understanding that he was just put on the ground and handcuffed and then like forcibly told to sit down. And I love football season. So naturally I was watching football, very aware of this as it was going on. But then I also get really excited for the like ESPN, the Mondays following Sunday football, Saturday football, getting to see the all the highlights and people talking about it and all that stuff. I really, really love it. And so I was excited this morning, but I was bummed. Many of you know I have a controversial take where I actually really like Stephen A. Smith. I like him 95% of the time. And it's this stuff that most gets me. This is where I most really lose my patience with Stephen A. Smith. And it's always the kind of race baiting sort of stuff, right? That really starts to get under my skin and really bothers me. And this was a great example of it today, I think, is getting on ESPN today on First Take. And they started with the story, of course, because it had to be the biggest story of the weekend because something happened to a black man and regarding the police. And this is the situation that we have now, is where anytime something like this happens, the immediate thing is to jump to race and to blame it on race. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today. I want to talk about why we do that. I want to talk about kind of generally warn against doing that. And really just something that dates all the way back to 2020. If you guys remember my letters that I wrote back in 2020, they were titled, if only life were black and white like me, got a generally really positive response on all of those letters. It was kind of in the wake of all the George Floyd riots and drama across the U.S., the racial issues of that time. And I've been somehow brought on a bunch of different podcasts and things to talk about race that back then, because it was so middle of the line. I think this is the one of the things that shows you that letter. And I think generally my approach to these things are so kind of balanced in a sense that I had a lot of podcasts, especially liberal podcasts back in 2020, Catholic liberal podcasts specifically, who I know would never have me on now, right? Because I had just kind of talked about it from a really, I think, kind of reasonable perspective, and people were open to that. But now I've really pissed off a lot of those people, and so I don't get the invites to those liberal podcasts anymore, unfortunately, which is very sad to me. It keeps me up at night. And I weep about it from time to time, but not too often, not like an unhealthy amount. But I'm generally okay from not being on the Catholic liberal podcast circuit. Now, the thing that I think is most interesting to me, and the thing that's probably bothered me the most out of all of this, is the comparisons from Tyreek Hill's incident to Scottie Scheffler's incident. And so I'm also going to talk about that a little bit and just kind of talk about why I think that's an absurd comparison. But to really get into why the Tyreek and Scottie comparison is crazy, you have to get into the story of behind Tyreek Hill, which is something I know we're never allowed to talk about, right? Whether it's George Floyd or a different situation, you're never really allowed to discuss or mention or say anything in regards to what these individuals have done in the past and how that might be contributing to, one, their current treatment, but two, also the way that they're probably interacting with police officers. And I think that's a really important thing to kind of begin with. But I first want to start with just kind of my general mindset and warning and approach to these situations. And that is that you have to be mindful and careful about what you say and what you believe and the takes you get behind before the information has come out. I think that it's possible that on both sides, you're going to have people feeling really stupid in like 3 days. I don't even know. Maybe there's more stuff that has come out that since I've been working today. I don't know. But you're going to have people that are going to feel really dumb in a few days on both sides, or especially on one of the other side, because either he was very respectful and the police were just totally overreacting, if you've seen the video, which we only really get the tail end of the video. I haven't seen any of the footage early on. So really, it's just this huge question mark. I'm going to play this clip from from First Take this morning with this quote unquote reporter. They bring on, the white liberal with all the all the POC, all the people of color. So you got Shannon Sharp, Stephen A. Smith. I actually, for what it's worth, thought Shannon Sharp's take was very balanced and reasonable. And I'll get to that a little bit as well. But they bring on, you have to have the white liberal come on and just talk about how bad this is first. And one of the things I think is really interesting is he admits this gap of evidence that we have, that we don't really know what took place. But it's interesting that he, and I think many other people, especially the white liberals, will say, well, we're just going to take Tyreek's word for it. And Tyreek said that he was perfect. Now, this makes me wonder if you've ever talked with somebody, whether they be white or black, because I've had it on both sides, who's been arrested, especially if they've had any type of real run-in with the police that was negative, right? I remember when somebody that I knew growing up, very close with, perhaps a member of my extended family, she had this incident with the police. She ended up getting tased. Now, at first, what our family was told was that it was just totally out of nowhere, police brutality, all these things. You later find out that she was attacking the police officer. And this is the kind of stuff that happens with people who find themselves as quote unquote victims of police brutality, is when the story kind of hides what you may have done. It's very easy, and I'll admit, tempting, whether you're in school or any type of place where you might be getting in trouble, to just paint the other person as totally bad. But if you have at least 3/4 of a brain cell, then you know that you have to hear both sides of a story, right? If you've ever been a parent or been around children or been around any immature people, which I'm going to very clearly show you is a category of people Tyreek Hill falls into, then you know that you actually have to be somewhat mindful to say, oh, wait, I should probably hear the other person's side of the story as well. Because right now I'm only getting one person's side, and this person actually is extraordinarily untrustworthy. And that's what I think is the crazy part of these comparisons between Scottie and Tyreek. But last thought on that. I always say this. Whenever there's a police shooting, any type of incident, and people are starting to say race, whatever, you typically have conservatives, right-leaning people who will immediately rush to defend the police officer, liberals who will immediately rush to defend the black person, Hispanic person, whatever it is. Both of them are wrong. You just need to wait to find out what happened. There's nothing wrong with that. And I will say that I respect this, at least about Stephen A. Smith, is that it seemed like his first tweets about it yesterday, when I was seeing him tweet about it, was so over the top and overblown and just exaggerated and just kind of acting like we knew exactly what happened and he was just definitely mistreated. And then I did feel like today he was a little bit more scaled back. I think just the time helped him a little bit, which happens to all of us. All of us, sometimes emotionally react. I'd warn people with a huge platform against doing it on your platform. I don't think that's helpful for America or for the black community or any community. So I think we have to be mindful of all of that. And just remember that this stuff is, it's emotionally charged. It's difficult, but we have to wait to find out what actually happened before we start to form our opinion and have a position. And so let me go ahead and we're going to share a clip here of the thing that actually went down. No. I'm not going to share that because I think you've probably seen it right now. If you haven't, you can go look at it. But we're going to watch a little clip of First Take. So this is I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen him before. I don't like him. I won't say that. He's a child of God, so I do love him, but I don't like him. He seems like a turd. And I generally, whenever you bring the white liberal in, I'm probably not going to be a big fan, right? I think it's a very, very frustrating demographic for me. But let's listen to what this guy has to say.
Well, I can tell you, I asked Tyreek Hill actually after the game, Molly, about why he believes that he was pulled over. He said, speeding, reckless driving, or whatever. He really didn't at that point understand exactly why he.
Now, this, I'm going to interrupt. This was another thing that he said that I thought was really, really funny, is he says, oh, he didn't really understand. He didn't even know why he was pulled over. And I'm like, have you ever, this is just mind blowing. Have you ever talked to the kid in school? Do you remember getting in trouble in school? Or if you weren't the kid that got in trouble in school, because I was for my first 2 years, then I kind of got my act together for my junior and senior year. But if you ever talk to the kids, especially those who were habitually in trouble in school, Again, this is beyond race, white or black. And you said, "What did you get in trouble for today?" And you genuinely believe that you were going to get 100% the true answer. You are so dumb. You are so painfully dumb. It's not even funny. It should be illegal. It should be illegal to be that dumb and be on national television. I'm serious. And this is what this guy said. Things like, he's like, well, he didn't even understand why he got arrested because he says, I asked him if he knows. And he said for speeding or something. I don't even know. And he blames Tyreek not knowing on the police. Now, is it possible that the police didn't tell him while they were pulling him over? Absolutely. However, if you have to give one in favor of one or the other, typically the police are pretty trained to say, do you know why I'm pulling you over today? It's like the first thing they do. Now, it's possible that he skipped that, but I'm pretty certain that he told him. And he probably just forgot or is trying to downplay it and spin the media up to get behind him, to get the police officer fired, to get mad at. My guess is that he was just feeling entitled and just being a douchebag about it. But let's go on here with this guy. He said he didn't even know. Hilarious.
He was pulled over. And that certainly is the big answer that we still need to get from the Miami-Dade Police Department. And I did reach out to them this morning. They said because it's now an internal investigation, which, by the way, one of the police officers has been placed on administrative duty, they can't comment on it at this point.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that for what it's worth. Just putting the guy on administrative duty, probably the right move. Just remove him off the street, do the investigation, then you can get back out there once everything's cleared up, if that should be the conclusion of the investigation.
But we do need to find that out. Why, in fact, was he pulled over? I also asked Tyreek Hill why he was placed in handcuffs. He said he didn't know. He felt like he was respectful. He didn't cuss. He said he put his hands on the steering wheel like he has been taught to do since he was a young man, and believes that he handled everything appropriately.
Now he goes on to say eventually that he actually knows, or that there's other video. They share that there's other video that shows that he was, they were knocking on the window and he refused to lower the window. And so this again, like this whole guy's shtick is just like, this is what Tyreek said, that he was perfect. He was daddy's little angel, and he doesn't know why he got put in handcuffs, and he doesn't know why he was pulled over, and he was respectful, just like his mother told him to be. Now, mind you, this is respectful Tyreek Hill. He was raised, his mama told him, raised him to be a good man, right? That is what he's known for, correct? Incorrect. Let's look back at a few things about Tyreek Hill going into this that I would assume the Miami Police Department would know about before pulling him over. If they didn't know that, they would at least know something about his character, his personality, that he can be loud, cocky, kind of the very much the superstar mentality, right? He thinks he's the best. He thinks he's better than other people. The Chiefs moving off of him, when him and Mahomes he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and the Chiefs happily let him go, just like moved off of him. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, some of the drama going into the Chiefs even drafting him, and then they moved on and let him go, and he's still claiming he's the best player in the league. He's very cocky. And so to me, that's what's so crazy about the comparison between him and Scottie. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're on Locals, you'll be able to see what I'm sharing on my screen already, kind of giving away the plot. But for you guys listening on Instagram, I pulled up this article from Barstool Sports, but it's quoting a lot of, I know they just compiled it, I felt like the best. But this is from July of this year. Tyreek Hill has just been declared the father of another baby and has one on the way. This is by Jerry Thornton back in July. It says here, as you scroll down further, Tyreek Hill they call him a world-class impregnator on here. This man is, there was an article that came out that he has 10 kids. Tyreek Hill is confirmed. He has 10 children, and it's said that he had 5 in this calendar year. So there's this tweet from July 11th, 2024 from ML Football that says a Florida judge has ruled that Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill is the father of another child, a baby girl. Hill reportedly has over 12 children, and it's his 5th so far this year. Mind you, this man is married and has a pregnant wife. This is just weeks after Hill announced his wife is pregnant. So think about that. His wife is pregnant. He's got somewhere between 10 to 12 children in total. I think his wife is pregnant with their 3rd together, from what I tried to put together. but I mean, really, really mind-blowing stats. To have 5 children in 1 year while you're married, and to assume that guy. No, I'm not even done yet. But to assume that guy and Scottie are the same is crazy. And so let me go here. I'm going to share a different screen here. We're going to go through his timeline of trouble. So again, this is what I think you have to assume. I think you have to assume that the Miami police officers would know about his history of arrest. What are some of Tyreek's other experiences with the police? Oh, they've actually all been violent interactions, or at least he was arrested or being looked into for violent crimes. So this one's coming from sportingnews.com. Tyreek Hill's timeline of trouble from a domestic violence arrest in college to Sophie Hall lawsuit with Dolphins. So this is before, or no, this was released yesterday. So it says that he's one of the best players in the NFL, undoubtedly true. He had this domestic assault charge while he was in college. So it says after a couple of seasons at Garden City Community College, he chose to play D1 football at Oklahoma State. But he only played 1 season because he was arrested for domestic violence and let go of the team. Crystal Espinal, which as far as I can tell is also his wife, that is the woman that I think he ended up marrying. But let me confirm that. Oh no, this is a different woman that he's married to. So I guess he and Crystal has several kids. Yeah. And then this Crystal, I think they were engaged at one point, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw that somewhere else. And so December 12th, 2014, at Hill's Stillwater home, escalated to physical violence. They had this argument that escalated to physical violence. Espinal said she was choked by Hill, who also punched her in the stomach and the face. And she was 8 weeks pregnant with his child. Still in pain in her stomach, she was concerned about the baby. Hill spent the night in jail and the next day was charged with felony domestic assault and battery by strangulation. That day, OK State released him, and he had to go to some other small college and all of that. He initially pled not guilty, and yada, yada, yada. Then there was controversy when the Chiefs chose him, and they say they looked into it and all these other things. But on March 15th, it says the Kansas City Star. This was March 15th of 2019. Yeah, before the 2019 season, he found himself in trouble again. So March 15th of 2019, the Kansas City Star, the newspaper, reported that Hill was under police investigation for battery involving him and Espinal's 3-year-old son. So this is the same woman that he choked and beat up and punched in the stomach. Now this son suffered a broken arm. So the son was punched in the womb by his father, and then he suffered a broken arm. Allegedly later on, there was, they called his fiance or whatever, called the police on him after the son had suffered a broken arm, and they're engaged at this point. Chief said they were aware of the situation, but allowed Hill to participate in the team's offseason program. The investigation led to Hill and Espinal temporarily losing custody of their son. So the investigation went far enough that they actually removed the child from the care of this couple. Now, let me remind you, this man who punched his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach, choked her, and hit her, and was charged with a felony for that, or convicted of a felony for that, and was had to go through domestic violence kind of stuff, training, and all these anger management classes and all kinds of things. And then he ended up with another time with this now fiance, same woman, calling the police. The police show up. 3-year-old son has a broken arm. Police investigation for battery. The investigation leads to them losing custody of their son. And this is the man, again, that we're comparing to Scottie Scheffler. If you know Scottie Scheffler, this is just absolutely insane. This is wild. Yeah. So there was a audio that leaked from Tyreek Hill and her arguing. Yeah, and they're just talking about beating up the children. And he's saying that the Espinal, his fiance, is saying that the child is terrified of you, and he says you need to be terrified of me too, bitch. So this is the stuff that's crazy to me. This is wild. So if you remember, obviously I covered a lot of the Butker situation. Just think about that. When do you think Tyreek Hill gets comments from Serena Williams about how we don't need him when he's at the ESPYs? No. But does Butker, because he says that he believes that women should value their role as being mothers and wives and consider being stay-at-home mothers and embrace that as the most important work that they'll do, which the church teaches? Yeah, that'll get you hate. But this, you can do all of these different things. And because Tyreek says that, I was immediately cooperative, then everybody's fine with it. And everybody assumes that it's the police officer's fault. And I just think that's so wild. And so let's listen a little bit here. We're going to listen to Stephen A. share a little bit of his thought. Oh, no, an ad. I really got to upgrade to the YouTube. What's it called? YouTube Premium or YouTube Plus. But I just think it's so sad, man. It's so sad to see people like him be propped up. And especially, I think it's even sadder for me for the Black community. To see people like him and to see Black somebody like Serena Williams come out so strongly against Butker, but then you have somebody like Tyreek Hill and you have all the Black community will come out in support of this and say, oh, this is terrible. This shouldn't have happened to him. And he's such a good person and we can just trust everything that he's saying about it is the truth. And I hope that, I don't know what the best possible outcome is. Maybe that was a little bit of both. Maybe he was being difficult and the police overreacted a little bit, but you just have to think that the police officers knew to play devil's advocate to ESPN. You have to think that the police officers at least knew that this was the biggest star on their football team. And to me, when you know that, you're not going to try to make national news and get placed on administrative leave by just flexing your power over this guy. I don't know why you would do that unless you were really dumb. And it's possible that this police officer was really dumb. That is a legitimate possibility. But you'd have to be really stupid in order to do that. And I think that you have to at least point that out and be willing to admit that you have to be pretty dumb in order to be willing to do that. You have to be a stupid individual. And to me, again, if you want to make the Scottie Scheffler comparisons, if it had happened to Tua, if it had happened to Dak, if it had happened to Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton here in the Broncos, if it had happened to LeBron, there's many athletes who don't have felonies on their records, who have not spent a year on probation, who do not have domestic assault and domestic violence charges on their record against children and women. If you and are not cocky and just fooling themselves the way that Tyreek Hill is, if you want to say one of them was treated differently than Scottie Scheffler was, but you're not going to convince me that once made contact with the police, that Scottie and Tyreek Hill, there's no situation in life. There's no situation in life, let alone when they're in contact with police officers, that Scottie Scheffler and Tyreek Hill react the exact same way. For what it's worth, that's true for many people across many different races. But there's people you can put in different categories as far as people who are reasonable, sound, humble, like Scottie is. And then you have people who are cocky, who are a-holes, who are self-absorbed and self-centered and entitled, like Tyreek Hill is. Doesn't mean he can't change, doesn't mean he can't be a better person eventually, and we hope and pray that he does repent. But for now, it's ridiculous to give him this benefit of the doubt that you're seeing from people's reactions. It's just absolutely absurd. And so let's look at Stephen A. here for a second.
He's going to the game. You get him out of his car. Why would you feel the need to have him face down on the ground? Even if he were in handcuffs, we would sit here today saying we don't know what happened. And that's fine. But the problem was you had him face down on the ground. You put him in handcuffs. And then if you watch the video, when he's standing up, cuffed with his hands behind his back in handcuffs, a second officer comes by and forcibly sits him down.
Okay, so there's plausible explanations for these things. What I think is most likely is I think that this is a total guess. My assumption based on how he behaves is that he would have just been difficult. I just think that there's a very low likelihood. And again, I could eat these words. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I think it's possible that Tyreek was pulled over for speeding. He didn't like it. He just wanted to go to the game. He was frustrated. He wanted to move on. He wanted to be treated special. And they didn't do that. And they said, sir, please put your window down. Please listen. And he wasn't cooperating. And then they asked him to get out of the car, and he wouldn't. And I would almost guess that he was just kind of like dead bodying it. Like, I'm curious to see, the only way that this would be, that they would be wrong, I think, is if he were to get out of the car and do everything they asked him to do, and then they slammed him on the ground. If that was true and that happened and he wasn't attacking them or being aggressive or resisting, then that shouldn't have happened and the police officer would be wrong. If he's being difficult and won't get out of the car and just like goes limp, then that's how he ended up on the ground. And if he's doing that, then when he's standing there, even handcuffed, you have the fear of as a police officer of the person running away, which is why you have them sit down. You don't see people just standing on the side of the road in handcuffs very often, do you? Why? Because people run away from the police. It happens all the time. And this, by the way, is the fastest man alive. And so if you're some average Joe police officer, you probably don't want him just sprinting off on you because he's unfathomably fast. And so you have him sit down. You say, hey, sit down, sit down, sit down. Sir, please sit down. And if he doesn't sit down, you force him to sit down. That's what happens. I don't know that that's what happened, but that would be a reasonable thing. We can't assume that, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Again, from what I said at the beginning, I don't recommend anybody taking an immediate side. I think what you at least have to do is try to give both perspectives and be reasonable. And so that's kind of my ultimate thought on everything happening with Tyreek Hill. And so I hope that, you guys will be thinking about this and we can reflect on this. We're going to see, Stephen A just goes on and on here about being upset.
And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And that's where the problem lies. See, when you bring up the Scottie Scheffler situation, understand we saw him taken away in handcuffs. Jeff did a great job. He had it, or the officer spoke to him. He was on video saying he's getting arrested. He's going to jail, et cetera, et cetera. But that was it. They took Scottie Scheffler away in handcuffs. We didn't see him face down. We didn't see a knee in his back. We didn't see him standing up with hands behind his back in handcuffs and then forcibly be sat down again. And so when you think about it from that perspective,
the main thing you have to think about is there's reasons for those things that could have happened that aren't related to the color of the person's skin. And that's just a reality. It's a tough reality. We're human. We want to jump to conclusions. We want to say we have all the answers. We want to be bold. We want to make our proclamations about what happened. And it's just tough because you can't really do that, not successfully and not with any allegiance to the truth. And so we await more information. Pray for all those that are involved. Obviously, we're glad nothing worse happened here for a number of reasons, but obviously we wouldn't want anything bad to happen to Tyreek Hill. But I think just remember this, when you see these people respond this way, that we often defend really terrible people and take their word for things that is just kind of a silly thing to do. Doesn't mean we need to be skeptical of every single person out there, but you shouldn't generally give the benefit of the doubt to somebody with a history of violent criminal behavior. You should at least come in it very level-headed. And so it's sad to see so many announcers and race baiters across the country and across the internet coming out to try to stoke this fire. So those are all my thoughts for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you listened, God bless you, and we'll see you next time